Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the League of Women Voters of the Plymouth area to discuss the important topic of power of local journalism. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and litigation at the local, state, and national levels. The League is open to both men and women, and we have several men in our League, 16 years and older. We have a membership table in the back if you'd like to learn more about our organization. One quick note, due to the way that we're recording this, I please ask that you try to keep the noise level in the audience at a minimum. Everything you say will be picked up on that mic, so keep it right. If any of you had postcards and wrote down a question, you can raise your hand, someone will pick them up, but I think we caught people on the way in. We're happy to have with us three very experienced journalists who help us grapple with the state of journalism today and what they've been doing to improve our access to the local news. Our first panelist is Barbara Roessner, or Bobby as she prefers. She is the founding editor of the New Bedford Light, a digital newspaper serving the South Coast. The New Bedford Light began publishing in June 2021 and has been the subject of stories of the New York Times, On the Media, the Boston Globe, and other outlets. Bobby is passionate about the power of public service journalism to inform and empower communities. She is the former managing editor of the Hartford Courant, where she helped lead the Courant newsroom to 1 Pulitzer Prize and 3 Pulitzer finalists. An executive editor of the Hearst Connecticut Media Group, she oversaw an amalgam of 5 daily newspapers, more than a dozen weekly newspapers, and an array of digital products. She currently serves on the board of the New England First Amendment Coalition, advocating for open government and freedom of the press. We also have with us tonight Mark Pothier, the current and original editor and CEO of the Plymouth Independent, our own local digital newspaper, which began publishing in the autumn of 2023. It has close to 30,000 subscribers, and in my opinion, it has added a great deal of sunlight to our local community. Mark brings nearly 4 decades of journalistic experience to the Plymouth Independent. His extensive career at the Boston Globe includes positions such as senior assistant editor, assistant managing editor of opinion, business editor, and was a regular contributor to the Globe Sunday magazine. Before being hired by the Globe in 2001, he was the executive editor for 14 years of the MPG newspapers, which included our very own old Colony Memorial. Mark has lived in Plymouth since 1985. Both newspapers are nonprofit 501c3 organizations, and they're free to everyone. The websites are available to all. A subscriber, as you've heard me mention, is someone who's asked to receive an email when a new story is posted. There's no subscription cost. Both papers rely on donations and sponsorships for their income. Our moderator tonight is Tom Redburn, who is a seasoned journalist with extensive experience in economics and business reporting. During his 3 decades in the field, he held prominent positions at the New York Times, including economics editor, international economics editor, deputy business editor, and technology editor. As economics editor, he was responsible for the publication's U.S. coverage for BizDay and the Washington Bureau. As technology editor, he managed a team of reporters in New York and Silicon Valley covering the early rise of Google, Amazon, the development of the iPhone, and cyber attacks. Tom is a founding board member of the Plymouth Independent. Please join me in welcoming our speakers tonight. Please silence your cell phones, and I turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Deb. Hello, and welcome to a conversation about the importance of local journalism with 2 of the most talented editors in the business. My name is Tom Redburn, and with me is Bobby Roessner, the founding editor of the New Bedford Light, and Mark Pothier, the first and so far only editor of the Plymouth Independent. I think we've all heard the phrase, "first they came for," and its application to Nazi Germany. Well, there's a new meme going around that speaks to the subject of our discussion tonight. First, they came for the journalists. We don't know what happened next. Journalists have been disappearing in this country long before Donald Trump came along bent on undermining the free press in America. Newspaper jobs have plummeted from more than 70,000 in 2008 to under 30,000 today. More than 3,500 newspapers have closed down, and over 80% of the remaining papers are weeklies rather than dailies. The reasons for the decline are complex, mostly rooted in changes in technology that have undermined the kind of paid advertising that provided the sustenance of the newspaper business since the 19th century. What's worse, most of the local newspapers that have survived have been taken over by chains of private equity firms that have bled them dry, leaving them mere ghosts of their former selves. And perhaps the most important consequence of that collapse is that much of the country is extremely difficult to know even the most basic information about what is going on in many of our cities, towns, and local communities. And without that foundation of knowledge, we're missing one of the basic elements of self-government. Luckily, something is happening that offers hope of filling that void. We're witnessing an explosion in digital-only news sites, nearly all of them nonprofits, that are starting to cover their local communities with varying degrees of rigor and determination to hold public officials accountable, and to simply let people know what is happening in their backyard. And tonight we are fortunate to have representatives from two of the finest examples of these new kinds of online publications in the country. Well, I have this long description here of explaining each, but they've already been introduced. So we're going to get right to it. Before opening up to questions, I'm going to turn things over to our panelists to talk a little bit about their perspectives on local journalism, and to give you some insights into the two outfits they've been involved in. New Bedford and Plymouth are very different places, and I think you'll find it very illuminating to hear them talk about the different ways the Light and the Independent have gone about covering the news and uncovering what is really going on in their communities. So first, we're going to hear from Barbara.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you tonight. We have a great crowd here, and thanks to my fellow panelists here. Just to give you a little perspective on my personal perspective on our industry, I became a reporter because when I was in college in the 1970s, I saw a very aggressive, principled, persistent newspaper take down a corrupt president. I know there are people in the audience who may remember that. It was a very formative time in my life. Fast forward 40 years, and I found myself as a senior editor and leader, presiding over the demise of the industry, the decimation of the newspaper industry, and all that ensued from that, the demise of our civic life, or the threat to our civic life, the assault on our conversation, our ability to have a conversation and have a debate about civic issues. And as Tom said, what Mark and I represent here, in my opinion, is hope. There is hope. There is this amazing thing going on, which is the start of nonprofit, nonpartisan, and in our case, and I think it's really key, all digital news operations across the country. In New Bedford, there is a daily newspaper, Gannett paper, which you probably all know does not have a great reputation these days. I always point out that I feel the pain of the reporters and photographers, editors who are there, because I've been there. I know how hard it is to keep it going when you don't have the resources to do it, and they don't have the resources. One of the reasons that we started the New Bedford Light in the spring, June of 2021, is that a bunch of citizens got together and said, what are we going to do? We can't figure out what's really going on in this city from reading the local paper, which was once a great paper. So I crossed paths with them. I had moved to the New Bedford area to retire, and I quickly found myself working 24/7 again, because I believe in the power of local journalism, independent rigorous accountability journalism. And that is what we do in New Bedford. As Tom said, New Bedford is a very different kind of community than Plymouth. Plymouth has maybe twice the median household income. New Bedford has a very high poverty rate. It is an immigrant city, a very proud immigrant city, and has been for generations since the whaling days. About 50% of the school-age population is Latino, mostly recent immigrants from Latin America. To the point of first they came for the journalists. Well, they have come for the immigrants in New Bedford. People are disappearing. Our count right now is 27, and we are counting, and we are watching, and we have a 3-person team. I have chills right now. We have a 3-person team on the streets of New Bedford, day and night, with incredible sources. Our reporters are Spanish-speaking. One of them is a Chilean journalist who lives in New Bedford and has incredible sources in the migrant community because he is actually part of the migrant community. And some of you may have seen the recent video of two federal agents smashing the window of a car with an axe and extracting forcibly 2 Guatemalan immigrants. And our team was there very quickly because they hear somebody's on the street, ICE is out there, they're taking somebody, and they got to the scene and we got the video of that event. And we published it right away, and it went viral. And to the point of the power of local journalism, last week, the gentleman was released. I'll stop there. I could go on, and stop me if I'm too long-winded, but it is my favorite topic. So, different community, different kind of news organization, because local means unique to the community. If I weren't in New Bedford, I wouldn't have a full-time fishing reporter. I wouldn't have a full-time immigration team. I wouldn't have a full-time offshore wind reporter. It's a whole different thing.
So Mark, how is Plymouth different, and how does the Plymouth Independent choose to cover it because of its differences from that?
Well, Plymouth is different. We don't have that immigration problem, but to that extent. But what we do have is a fast-growing town.
I think they can't hear
His
you.
mic is,
Can you not hear it? No? Can you move it up a little? Is that any better? No? Okay, there's always a mic problem.
is your light on? Is your light on?
My light is on. Yeah, my light is on. I'll hand it back to Barb. I think we're trying to fix this. Is it on even if I hold it there now? Okay. Tom, maybe you should keep talking then.
Well, I'm on the board of the Independent, and I can just talk a little briefly about how it got started. Again, I think it was a group of concerned citizens who were feeling that the Old Colony Memorial, of which Mark at one time was an editor when it was in its heyday, who felt that they just had no idea what was going to Plymouth. I moved to Plymouth myself in 2017. It was a news desert. I didn't even know the difference between what a town and a city was when I moved up here. I'm not originally from New England. So there was a whole sense that things were going on in the town, and it was not necessarily out of control, but it was run by a small clique of people, and I'm not sure they really wanted the town as a whole to know what they were doing. So when I heard from friends that this effort was being mounted, I was very happy to join in. I've been on the board for a couple of years now, and our goal is basically to bring to the attention of the citizens, what was going on. In many cases, focusing on the government because that was just such a crucial part of understanding how things were being done in this town.
Should we try again? Any better?
There you go.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. I don't have to say it. But I came to this town, I can't believe I've been here this long, but I raised my family here, 3 children, in the 1980s. And as Tom mentioned, my first job in journalism was as a local journalist, and the Old Colony Memorial was the centerpiece of the group of weekly papers. It was based where the Honda dealership is now. It was a tragic day for me when we saw that building razed. And the paper was vibrant. We had a healthy staff. We covered everything. And I always used to tell people that I was just a caretaker of it for whatever period I was there, because it was almost 200 years old. And I couldn't fathom anything bad happening to it. And that was very naive, of course. And so I left in 2000, kind of saw the writing on the wall. It had gone out of family ownership. It was still a pretty good paper, but I felt it was time to do something else. I was fortunate to get a journalism fellowship at Harvard, and I always tell the story that as part of that, you had to write this 5,000-word essay as to why you should get this thing. And my pitch was that I was concerned about the future of community journalism, which I said was a foundation of journalism and thus part of the foundation of democracy. And if that went away or severely damaged, so too would our democracy be damaged. And here we are, 24 years later, 25 years later, and all of that and more has come to fruition. I'm probably not quite as optimistic as Bobby is, but I do see some rays of light, and I certainly see sunshine in the reception that the Plymouth Independent has received. With almost 30,000 people on our list, hundreds of thousands of people reading it every month, we are bringing back local news, kind of lifting the lid on some things that have been in the darkness for a long time. And I think it's important work. I'm privileged to be able to do it. Do I wish we had more resources? Sure, I do. New Bedford has grown, and we hope to grow in a similar fashion. But I do think it's a really dangerous period in America as a whole, and even in a town, at a town level like in Plymouth. All things Plymouth, I probably don't have to say anything other than that, but I'll give you 2 quick examples of just today of kind of the misinformation, outright lies. I won't even get into the hatred, misogyny, racism, etc. that's all over that site unchecked. And it's like a monster. But just today, someone commented on the civil service question. It was on police wanted to be taken out of civil service for hiring, and that lost for a variety of reasons. Someone, a former select board member actually, not one of the ones that was just defeated, posted that the police department is down 26 people, and they can't operate this way. Well, I checked with the police department because I knew that wasn't right, because we had town manager saying it was going to be 11 by the end of the year. And sure enough, it looks like it could be 12 by the end of the year. 7 vacancies, 2 retirements, 2 people leaving. I'm not sure, at some point it adds up to 12. But that's just a small example. Then someone else commented saying, yeah, this would be really bad if it came out of civil service, because now the select board can hire the police officers. That's not true. But on top of that, then someone else said, well, hey, I heard they're down almost 30 people in the police department. And someone said, where do you hear that? Oh, a former select board member posted it. So that's the world we live in, and it's like, trying to put out brush fires all the time. It can be exhausting. But we're trying to do it bit by bit, and the best thing we can do is bring information to people and give them a vehicle that they can express their views on our site. And I think we're off to a good start, and we plan to continue doing it. And I think that other folks, as we were encouraged by the New Bedford Light, other folks are encouraged by us. I get phone calls pretty much every week from as far away as San Francisco, Chicago, asking what we're doing here. How do we have so many people reading the Plymouth Independent? And I always tell them that it's because there was this appetite for news, for information. And it continues, and it continues to grow. And that's where I see the rays of light.
Well, so you only have 2 reporters, and yourself who's a very energetic reporter in your own right. How do you decide what you're going to cover? I mean, you can't put out every brush fire of misinformation. How do you set your priorities?
Yeah, well, it's tough. I mean, when this started and it was a blank canvas, which was kind of exciting to me, coming from the Globe, where everybody had a certain area of responsibility. This was starting fresh. So what I did in the first few weeks was just meet with people, reacquaint myself with the town, because I'm not ashamed to admit, I didn't know who the police chief was. I didn't even know who the town manager was. I'd been working in Boston for 22 years, and the Old Colony Memorial, sadly, had eroded into nothing, almost worse than nothing. It'd be better if it wasn't even there. And I knew nothing about the town, so I had to learn everything. And then asking people what they wanted, I immediately got the idea that one thing people were missing was a sense of community, especially people that had moved to the town in the last 5 or 10 years. They'd come up to me and say, "We love Plymouth." I still get this to this day. But we don't know anything about it. We have no way of finding out what's going on. We don't know who the candidates are for office. We don't even know where certain places are. Like, there's this bike path in North Plymouth I just heard about. There was no vehicle or gathering place to establish a sense of community. So that was a priority, to make it be that. And then with that being the base, we knew government was going to be important, because, as I said earlier, it's a growing town, lots of growing pains. I personally love change, and I don't pine for Plymouth in the 1980s when I came here. It wasn't all that great. And if you went downtown, you'd know what I meant. And so we knew we'd have to cover government, all the growth issues associated with that, taxes, housing, environment, everything you can think of. But also we wanted to have arts and culture. We wanted to have business is in there, and we wanted people, faces, or personalities. So that's a priority, and then it comes down to me talking with Fred, who's here tonight, and Andrea Estes, Michael Cohen, who freelances, a couple other people, bouncing off ideas and just deciding. It's kind of a gut feeling, like, we need to do this story. We wish we could do more, but we try to pick a broad spectrum, and then some, of course, are obvious, like the election this past week. And I will briefly talk about that, because this ties into resources. I haven't even mentioned money yet, but we'll talk about money and how we need much more of it. But just to cover the election, Fred spent, I'm sure he could tell you how long probably, but an entire week just setting up and doing interviews with about a dozen people. So those are essentially like 12 little stories. Then writing that, then fact checking that, then me editing it, then us getting photos, all of that. Then the election itself, all day Saturday covering that, and then all day, most of Sunday, writing it and editing it. That's not a complaint, but it just shows you the kind of resources that it takes just to cover a town election. And all that time spent means other stories aren't getting covered. So we have to pick and choose on that basis, what we feel is most important, and also what's going to paint a full picture of the town, or as full a picture of the town as we can. So, it might be a story about a brewery, or it might be something quirky about the new police dog. But I don't consider that stuff trivial, because that's part of living in Plymouth, and that's part of the fabric of the community as well.
So Bobby, the light is really a pioneer in this space almost. I mean, you guys really, in many ways helped define what an independent digital news site should be. So how did you make those early decisions about what you really wanted to do? It was partly, of course, as you said, because of the nature of New Bedford, but it was more than that in terms of sort of setting the model, and you guys have become a model for this kind of journalism.
Well, the important thing is really to look at your place and understand your place. We are a very different community, as we keep saying, than Plymouth. And the first thing we did was to send out a community questionnaire in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Cape Verdean Creole. Now, the people who answer a questionnaire are few and far between in New Bedford. And we found that the people who were answering the questionnaire lived in the wealthier suburbs around New Bedford. So New Bedford has a fairly low literacy rate, different kind of educational attainment. Not very many people graduated from college or went on to get to advanced degrees or anything like that. And there's a very large population that doesn't speak English. Again, the immigrant community. So we really looked very carefully at what are the needs of this place and where is the gap. It isn't a news desert in the sense that Plymouth is. When there's violent crime in New Bedford, there are 8, maybe 9 news outlets that report it. And usually only the violent crimes, including by the Globe and others. So we really had to look at what is the need and what is the gap. And there is a local daily paper. And no, they don't do what we call enterprise reporting, let alone investigative reporting or accountability journalism, but they cover the hell out of high school sports, which is important. And I'm glad they do it, because we don't have to do it. And you cannot duplicate, in my opinion. You duplicate, you die. And I know that because I learned it the hard way. And I could see that when you have 10 reporters at the state capitol all covering the same thing, that's not the way to make a difference in your community. So we looked really hard at the gap and looked at the news ecosystem, which is very complex. There's an AM radio station, 24/7 radio station in New Bedford. It's a right-wing station. Howie Carr is on in the afternoon. They have local, very conservative talk show hosts most of the morning. It is a generally conservative city. It did go for Harris, but not by much. And so there's that. There's the local paper. There are TV stations out of Providence that, so it's just a different deal. And the point is that there is no roadmap for this. You have to make it. You have to make it up. You have to use your expertise and your experience and listen to your community, and then you have to plot your course. So we go very heavy on issues of the housing crisis, which of course is an issue everywhere, and education. But the education stories we're doing are about how do you teach kids who come to school without having eaten, kids who don't speak English at home, who are maybe new immigrants, maybe they've got violence in their lives on a daily basis. These are different kinds of stories, and they don't necessarily come before the school board that way. So we have a full-time education reporter who is fantastic, Colin Hogan, because he was a teacher. When he graduated from college, he got a job with Teach for America, and they put him in a rural school system in Mississippi, where he was one of the only white people. And I think his degree was in English, and he had to teach math. And then he worked for a charter school in an urban district in New York City. And he just realized that there were so many stories going on in the classroom that he was never reading about anywhere, and that he wanted to be the guy to be the storyteller. So he went to Columbia Journalism Master's Program. They have an excellent graduate program there. And I heard about him word of mouth through somebody I knew, and I contacted him and brought him up and gave him the rap about doing real journalism and not covering incremental breaking news, but really going deep into the most important stories. And he came to the New Bedford Light and to New Bedford. It's not that easy to get people to move to New Bedford. But we've got 8 or 9. There's just started to be a little turnover. And by the way, Colin has been there for 3.5 years and has gotten many offers to other publications, but he wants to work on the ground in a city like this, where the issues that we see roiling nationwide are happening. They're happening right in front of us. And, we sometimes use the term bear witness. And we don't mean it in a religious sense, but we are bearing witness to what is going down in a city that wouldn't otherwise have reporters also covering the waterfront. New Bedford is the highest grossing fishing port in the country, okay? In the country. It is the staging ground for the first commercial scale offshore wind farm, which is in Buzzards Bay. It's poor and also rich in culture. The arts and the culture in this community are amazing because of the diversity of the place and because it's not really well organized. There's no barrier to entry. So we cover the hell out of the arts as well. And that's a way to get to the pockets of the community that are never going to go to City Hall. They're never going to go to a council meeting. They're not going to go to a school board meeting. They've come to New Bedford from totalitarian governments. You don't go and complain about stuff to your government. So we go very heavy on arts and culture, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see this polyglot place that expresses itself. And then we do heavy investigations. We partnered very early on with ProPublica. We applied to them for a very substantial grant of $75,000. We were nothing and nobody. I had one reporter. I was pro bono. Our publisher, Steve Taylor from the Boston Globe, was pro bono. And we hired this kid who just kind of popped up. And he wrote a hell of a proposal to ProPublica to figure out why is the fishing industry so lucrative and profitable, and the people who work in the industry are so freaking poor? Mm-hmm. So it kind of took an outsider, and he says this to me, I'm like, yeah, what's going on here? So we partnered with ProPublica, and it took 10 months working with excellent journalists at ProPublica to find out that the waterfront of New Bedford, largest, most lucrative fishing port in the country, had been taken over by foreign private equity. One of the wealthiest families in the Netherlands, a Dutch banking family, had bought up. Okay, I'm going to stop.
No, it's just there's the feedback there. Keep going.
But just, it's really important to understand when you want to start pulling the threads of a place and find out where it leads you. We didn't know what we were going to find. We knew something was up. We had a hunch, right? You get a hunch. And we published a very deep investigation 10 months after we had even started publishing. And it was promoted nationally, internationally by ProPublica. The seafood industry, the fishing industry is an international business. It looks to New Bedford. It looks to the little New Bedford Light. We have readers from all over the world and all over the country who come to us to read about what's going on in the fishing industry and what's going on in offshore wind. So I just want to say one little thing which is interesting about, and this is one of the reasons that we created the kind of publication. I try not to call it a newspaper because it is all digital. But because of the nature of the community and the needs of the community, we, newsletters that, the newsletter that you call subscribers that comes free into your email. We have a newsletter, we have a daily newsletter, we have a weekender newsletter, but that's not the sole source by any means of how the readership comes to us. We do a lot of video. We're very heavy on social media. For people who don't want to read a deep investigation, we'll do a short video. You might read those in the Times. I've started reading them in the New York Times every day, where the reporter says, here's what I'm covering and here's what I found out. We'll do a short video version of a deep investigation. And we'll post it on, obviously, Facebook and X, Instagram. And so we gauge our audience differently. We have about 80,000 visitors per month to our website. And then our social reach is about 100,000 a month. So you need to think about a digital audience very differently than a traditional print or subscriber type of thinking. And we are heavy on video, and that video I was just mentioning about the ICE guys, I don't even know if they're legitimate people, but anyway, they were representing ICE, and ICE confirmed it, who attacked this parked car, 2 immigrants in it with an axe. That went viral, and we had a couple of million views of that video, and it went all over the country.
So
and
you said you have
internationally.
80,000 readers, 100,000
Well, 80,000 visitors per month
yeah,
to the
okay,
website.
so how many of those contribute money?
Very small percentage.
So the basis of the newspaper business for years was advertising and then subscriptions. A few places like the New York Times have turned their model around so they rely on subscriptions, paid subscriptions, paywalls. You're not doing that.
Right.
You probably couldn't do that. You're not doing that. So how are you guys going to survive?
Well, that's a question we ask ourselves quite often, but we are raising a substantial amount of money. We have a budget of about 1.6, 1.7 million a year. We've been able to meet that. Our money comes from donors, local donors, reader-supported. We have a couple of very wealthy folks who invested in us early on. It's no secret because we publish all of our donors. Transparency is a really important thing to us, and we make it very, very clear to our donors and to our readers and everybody else that the newsroom is completely walled off from the money side, and that's so key to our independence, our integrity, and the trust. But Erwin Jacobs, the founder of Qualcomm, thank you very much, a very, very wealthy man, lives in San Diego. He's in his 90s. He graduated from New Bedford High School. We're meeting with him tonight. We're actually meeting with him tonight in New Bedford. And we just asked him, and he early on, in the early days, early weeks, I don't know if we had even published yet, donated $250,000. And then he did it again, and he did it again. We have an anonymous donor who annually gives us $100,000 as a match. And this is really interesting. This is he does not live in New Bedford. He, she, whatever. Happen to know who it is. But anyway, lives in one of the wealthier suburbs around New Bedford. And he donates $100,000, or has for, I think, 4 years now, every spring for a spring match. And he requires that donors up to $100 are matched 3 times. So a $100 donation equals $400. And donations up to, I think, $1,000 are matched twice. So 1,000 equals 3,000. And over that, they're matched once. And this is up to 100,000 match. So we have to go after the small donors because this guy wants us to communicate on all levels of income. So we have quite a few donors who give us $5 a month. And then we have some who give us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And we also apply to foundations. We give this wrap I'm giving now, we give it to the foundations, and we talk about the stories we want to do, and we talk about immigration and how what's happening nationally is on the street in front of us, and we need to have investigative reporters on the street figuring out what's going on. And we've gotten some very substantial donations from the Knight Foundation and some other also substantial but smaller foundations from donations from various foundations. But we have 3 people, I believe, on our development team who work full-time to raise money. And that's a really key thing with a startup. And I heard this just from other people around the country when we were trying to figure out what to do. You got to get your development and people in place. You got to get the business side as active and as well-staffed as the journalism side. Or you're not going to have the money to pay the journalists to do the great work that is going to encourage people to donate.
So you guys are much newer.
Yes.
You face these problems probably at even more quantum levels. You didn't have someone quite like Irwin Jacobs to start you out.
No, but I'm going to email him tomorrow.
Stay away from her.
Tell us about how the Plymouth Independent hopes to survive.
Well, first I'll say that it's a precarious business. There have been a lot of well-meaning, enthusiastic nonprofit news sites that have started and folded. So they don't all succeed. I view us as a startup, just like when I was a business editor at the Globe, we covered startups, and guess what happens to most startups? They have great ideas, and they spend a lot of money, it's called a burn rate, and then they go out of business. Some of them catch on and do great. Moderna, you may have heard of, that's one of them. But, so it's a challenge. We're spending more money than we take in. That's the reality. So that cannot continue. And we have had some generous donations of, a 6-figure donation from some folks in town. But we haven't reached the point where we can even hire a 4th staff person. And that's not sustainable if we stay at that rate. So yeah, we're concerned. We have a consultant fundraiser who's helping us at a steep discount. He's been fantastic. And we're just now in the position, thanks to a generous donation, going to look for a development person to do that. In fact, I had said to the board that, before we hire a 4th person on the editorial side, we got to hire someone who's going to work full time to raise money. Because what happens is that folks will say, yeah, I love the Plymouth Independent. I donated $50. It was January 2024, which is appreciated, but it's like, you buy groceries every week or so. It's the same kind of thing. So we need that. But at the same time, advertising, we haven't spoken about advertising. And Tom, you have some stats about our fundraising. I'll let you give those specifics. People say to me all the time, why do you have ads on the site? We have these sponsorships, which are just a few $100. And they're really just a branding thing, and we're very grateful to the businesses that do it. But the reality is that businesses aren't willing to pay much money for online advertising. It's true, BostonGlobe.com. It's true everywhere except maybe the New York Times. And charging a subscription, putting up a paywall. They're drastically cut our audience. And how much are we going to charge? 25 bucks a month. Say 1,000 people do it. That's not enough to cover 1 month. So we need big donors. We're just getting to the point where we can start getting some grants. We got, I think, a $20,000 one. But these foundations, they want to see a track record. They want to see that you have an audience. So we're getting to that point. But as you can imagine, that's a long process. Anyone who's ever done grant writing, you don't just get the money in the bank within 3 weeks. So it's a challenge. I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I'm on the
otherwise.
board, and our number one job is to think about fundraising for the independent. And the focus is going to be on people who are willing to give a lot of money, because that's the most efficient way to raise money. But 60,000 people, over 60,000 people live in Plymouth, over 30,000 email subscribers. It would really make a difference if more of those people decided, I'm going to give something, just a little something every month. $10 a month, $20 a month is a reliable source of income. And then if you have that as a base, we can support. I mean, our budget is roughly at the moment $40,000 compared to $40,000 a month. If we're going to do the kind of publication and news information that all of you want for Plymouth, it's going to take, twice that at least, probably more. We need another editor, we need another reporter covering, something like education or the environment. Those things do cost money, and that is going to be the biggest challenge we're facing.
I think we had about 10% of the people that read The Independent have donated money. It's even worse than the election turnout.
So I'm going to start taking questions from you guys. I do have a couple that were submitted here. The one that's probably most relevant, and I don't know if this applies to both or not, but so the question is, there were 2 political rallies in Plymouth, anti-Trump rallies in the last few months. Why did the Independent not cover them? At least that's the question. And were you afraid of some sort of backlash?
Well, first we did cover one of them. We had a video of it. So we didn't cover the second one. And the reason is primarily it's resources, but also that is not inherently Plymouth. Those rallies were going on everywhere. And yeah, in an ideal world, we cover everything, whole spectrum, but we have to make choices. And I think that one of those rallies was going on the day of town meeting. So that's where we were. All 3 of us were focused on town meeting. And Jim, Karen, photographer, was there too, because no one else is going to cover Plymouth town meeting. There's all kinds of places you can get coverage pro and against Donald Trump. And so that's not our core mission to do that. It has nothing to do with repercussions or fear. I think you can see from our coverage of town hall and our interactions with the town manager and the police chief that we're not, all of us have been between Fred, Andrea, and myself. We're probably talking, we're well over 100 years of journalism experience. We've been through every possible thing, and we're not afraid of anything like that. Andrea, in particular, built her career in being a tenacious / hard-nosed investigative reporter, and in the Globe newsroom, she's one of those people that they would say, if your phone rings and it's Andrea Estes, your day just got worse. She's not calling to ask how you're feeling. So that's not the issue. It's resources, but also our mission. We had to cover town meeting. That's Plymouth's legislative body, and we didn't have to cover a rally. It's not a political statement of any kind.
Do you have anything comparable in New Bedford?
We have a lot of rallies that go on in New Bedford. There have been immigration, very powerful rally, one of them. where there were hardly any, I don't think there were really any city hall type people. The mayor wasn't there. The superintendent of schools got up there and talked about here I go again with New Bedford immigration, but two 16-year-olds who were cuffed and taken out of bed, at 7 a.m. in the morning after ICE came with a battering ram and, broke the door, and two other adults in the house were taken out. But the superintendent of schools had the guts to stand up there and say, this can't happen to the students of New Bedford High School. And, we were there. We did video. Believe we did a short story. We made a lot of contacts there. We did cover an anti-Trump rally not in New Bedford, in the next town over. But really, where our resources go is to make sure that no immigrant disappears from the streets of New Bedford without the public knowing about it. That's number one, right now with Trump. And the other one is to really put our resources into doing deep enterprise reporting on what Trump's domestic policy, basically cuts to various programs, what it means to the people of New Bedford, what those cuts mean to the people of New Bedford. What does it mean to the schools? What does it mean to climate? We're a coastal community with all kinds of climate issues. We're on Buzzards Bay. So we do a lot of stories about those things. What does it mean to healthcare in New Bedford, to public health, and access to public health? There is, again, it's a very divided community. It's really about 50-50, blue and red. And just, something that just occurred to me, the conservative radio station, AM radio station, our reporters go on there on those talk shows. They're guests on those talk shows very frequently, several times a week, to talk about stories that we're working on or stories that we publish, because we need to talk to those people. And I put that in quotes because they're part of the community, and they have very strong feelings about all kinds of things. And so we're careful. We don't try to do, this side and that side. We try to do the whole of an issue, the whole of whatever the issue is that's being protested for or against. Look into what is it about? What's the impact on the community? But it's hard. There are a lot of things you don't cover because you make those really hard decisions, and you just have to keep going. And I always tell people, think about what we are doing, not what we're not doing. Think about what we are doing. Is that important? Is that meaningful? Is that significant? And I'll tell you, a fundraising consultant others talked to very early on when we were, I don't know if we had even published yet, said something that has just stuck with me. She said, and she's coming from the nonprofit world, not nonprofit journalism, but nonprofits, impact equals money. Impact equals money. You have to show people what your impact is. And that's how you get their support.
You wanted to add
I was just
something?
going to add quickly that obviously I think political engagement at any level is great and that people do it. But people really need to be more engaged at the local level here. It's where you can affect change. It's where you interact with government more. And honestly, I kind of wish I would see the same enthusiasm and gusto for local issues and people getting actively involved as they do holding a sign saying Trump is a tyrant, which I may personally agree with. But realistically, you're not, again, it's important to stand up for democracy or whatever you believe in. But at the local level, when I watch like a select board meeting and there's 14 people watching that, 17 sometime last time, that's where people need to be engaged. Come to those meetings, talk to the officials, let them know what's going on, and they want, well, some of them want that, and that's important. So again, I turn down things all the time that aren't Plymouth because that is our focus. I turn down obituaries, sorry, if they're from Duxbury, because there's no connection to Plymouth. That's just the way it's going to be.
So we have time, I hope, for some questions. I hope we have some questions from the audience. Just stand up, raise your hand. I don't know if they have a mic you're trying to get around or just back there. Can you stand up, please?
I was just wondering how y'all are trying to engage with more of like the youth as you kind of
More with what?
Young people.
Youth, okay.
Yeah, I can.
So let me repeat, just
Yeah.
the question is how do you think about engaging more with youth and I guess students?
It's a big problem. Most of these events I go to, the audience skews older. I'm older. I know how my kids get their news, and we've reached out. We've gone to the schools, but we don't have anyone actively covering schools right now. So clearly, that's an area we need to do better. And but to be honest with you, too, I've reached out to several people at the schools about the news that they're doing there and the journalists that they're doing there, and they'll send me a couple of video clips, and then I don't hear anything for months, and I'll say, hey, we have this great platform. Thousands of people will see these kids work on the site, and so I'm a little disappointed in that part of it, but the real answer is we need to have more people. We need to hire a younger reporter, people that can relate to those folks. It's crucial because the people that vote and the people that tend to get engaged are older, and at some point, there's going to be a hollowing out that again is going to threaten democracy.
One of the things we did very early on, I'll just say very quickly, is even when we really didn't have the wherewithal, we did a lot of things without the wherewithal, just, in kind, blood, sweat, and tears, is we hired a whole bunch of summer interns for a 6-week program, and we made sure that they were local. And we had UMass Dartmouth, Bristol Community College, New Bedford High School, 6 kids use their phones to shoot video, to get out in the city, get around, put these cool videos together. And our internship program has just expanded and expanded. And I can't stress enough how important social media is. That is where younger people are. And they don't have to be that young. I mean, I'm on social media and I'm not young. And that's just where you go. I get a feed every morning from my sources that I want to view. And stuff pops up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And that's where probably the bulk of our audience is coming through social. Or seeing content in a different form than text. And I think that's really important.
Sir, you have a question?
I'm wondering if you've taken a look at the funding issues with an enterprise fund in mind that could solicit interest from academia, perhaps, in funding the development of messengers, of storytellers that are incorporating the mediums that you are exploring and trying to use, and you're really the living test tube of the new matrix of communication.
That's right.
And that is a commodity that people would purchase In the old school, they would purchase it for an academic recognition, the Columbia School of Journalism, the Harvard School of Journalism. But why not your school of journalism that's cutting edge, that might attract some people who understand that? And since 90% of philanthropy comes from individuals, it's not grants and it's not corporations, it's individuals. All you have to do is look at PBS and scroll. Those are people.
So if I understand your question, why are we not getting more foundations that support?
No.
Or the opposite?
An enterprise that you could develop and sell that would produce people who want to become media experts to develop this new communication. They would enroll with you. They would be people learning to write, learning to use the media. You would train them. They would pay you for it. Where would the pay come from? Maybe it's an accreditation through Bridgewater. So you enroll in Bridgewater. They give you 50%. I mean, it's just a model.
Well, I like the way you're thinking because we are pioneers. We are in uncharted territory. We don't know what's going to happen a few years from now. Our whole model may change. And we have to be thinking in a really, not just innovative, an inventive way about our journalism and how to bring value to it outside of the way we might be thinking right now or in any kind of traditional way. So we do think about really expanding our internship program to something much broader, more engaging, but we haven't thought about charging for it. But that's a really interesting idea. Maybe we could, well, I don't know. Partnering with public colleges and universities is a very complex thing. Doesn't necessarily pay off for the time that you invest in those conversations. But we're constantly having those conversations.
Do you want to say anything about that question or not?
Well, I love the idea. It's just I don't have the time. We don't have the staff of 3 people. When I was at the Globe, I loved working with interns. We had co-ops from Emerson and Northeastern and BU, and I taught at Harvard Extension School for 9 years. And in fact, one of my former students was just a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize, Marcela Garcia, in editorial writing. And I would love to do that, and I turned down several kids who applied for summer internships with Plymouth Independent because I just don't have the time to do it. I'd be doing them a disservice. So it all comes back to resources and building up that we have a few more people that someone could be offline and work with a student for an afternoon and go out with them in the field. If I did that now, the whole operation comes to a halt. So it's tough.
Question.
I have a question. If you have this many subscribers and people that are interested in reading you, have you reached out, aside from we get the pop-ups about donating?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody loves the pop-ups. I'm sorry.
But have you reached out to the people that are faithful to reading you and asking for their help to refer, to get other people to read, to make suggestions on content or on how they can help? There's a bunch of people that will help. They just don't know what to do.
So the question is, have we reached out to people to ask for help, both financially and I guess in kind? You want to start with that one?
So it took us a while to set it up, a couple of years. And we're only turning 4 this June, by the way. We're not really, haven't been around for all that long. But we have an advisory council, and that has maybe 35 or 40 people on it. And we have quarterly meetings, and we have gone through some contentiousness with folks who think that they are going to tell us what to do in the newsroom. And we have to be very clear that they're not on the advisory council to edit our content. That's for the journalists in the newsroom to do. But the advisory council can be incredibly helpful in marketing, in getting out there, in setting up the table at every community event with, marketing materials and sign up and here's a button and here's a magnet, all that kind of, on the ground retail kind of marketing. That takes volunteers to do that work. So they can be really helpful there. And they are a network of, we call them ambassadors for the light, who talk to their friends and their friends talk to their friends. And that's just a way to get kind of a crew, like a loyal crew that understands our mission, that really believes in independent journalism and helps to spread the word, just get the message out there. And there are all kinds of levels to that.
So the Independent started with a group of ambassadors, and that has sort of
Fizzled.
fizzled, I guess would be the right word. Okay. So what do you see as
Yeah,
going
that was already in
forward?
place when I came here, and we get this all the time. How can I help? And we need to do a better job. In fact, at the last board meeting, we were discussing a little bit how can we revive that ambassador program that, as I'm hearing now, we obviously ripped off from the New Bedford Light, but it's a good idea because people do want to help. We did recently, through Troy Fenn, our consultant, sent out a questionnaire. I'm not sure, I think 600 or 700 people.
No, about 900 people altogether.
900 people, and so we were soliciting what they wanted more of, what they liked, what they didn't like. And just last week at an event in the Pine Hills, I got that same thing. We want to help, what can we do? So we need to make that a priority and take advantage of that energy and help spread the word. We're doing okay with readers, although still bump into people that aren't aware of it yet. And so we can do better on that.
I mean, last summer, the board played a role in setting up stands at various fairs and things like that. Summer does bring that again. It's a possibility that we'll be looking for volunteers to help on that front going forward. I know, Pine Hills has its weekend things at the beer fest and so on. Those would be opportunities, and maybe that's something we should all be thinking about. Okay, another question?
What did you say your operating budget was for a year?
Well, it's really under $500,000.
For the Independent, it's under $500,000 now.
And we're not taking in $500,000, so. We're,
How much more do you need to bring it to the next level to be able to?
we need $1 million a year, right? $1 million a year.
We need to operate with about $1 million in operating expenses to have a staff that would start to cover the community more fully. But even on top of that, we're hoping to raise what we're calling an endowment, which would provide a monthly income that could support some further stuff. We need to basically be able to say, we're going to be here for a long time, give people the confidence that it will survive beyond the next couple of years.
And I don't want to minimize we're talking about people that give lots of money, but the small amounts are great, especially the recurring ones, kind of like the NPR model. I was walking on Pleasant Street the other day, or last Thursday, and a woman pulled her car over and said, "Oh, you're the guy from the Independent." I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'm sorry, I can only give $10 a month. I'm going to try to do better." I said, "No, thank you." So it's kind of a cliche, but every dollar helps. So it doesn't have to be someone who can write a check for $10,000 or more to help, because even just having some steady revenue stream that we can count on, it pays for the website hosting, pays for the email, that costs money to send out every day, pays for the libel insurance. There's lots of things that go into making this happen.
So Deb, you have a question?
Yeah, a entirely different topic. How do you see AI affecting the way that you do journalism?
This is all AI right now. And
We're virtual.
Yeah, we're not really here.
And I knew that question was coming. AI is inevitable. And in fact, I'm watching the last Tom Cruise movie right now, Mission Impossible. It's all about AI taking over the world. Of course, it's a great tool, and we're already using it in things in research, but it's not going to report on the street. Not replace on the street reporting, at least not under my watch. There are some publications out there now that are doing it, and it's pretty terrible, actually. And it's the problem with AI is without the humanity, and it's just pulling data from all over and assembling it in some way, like the election story Fred did today or over the weekend. AI could never do that story. It has context, background, all these things that AI would not do. So I'm not afraid of AI really at all, but it's a tool.
You know, it might be used as it is now in most of your searches, summarizing content, things like that. But again, nobody knows exactly where it's going at this stage. And there's a lot of misuse of AI at this stage that you have to be careful to avoid.
In fact, I just want to say someone, again, I come back to all things Plymouth, scourge of my life, but somebody just put up something recently saying, I asked ChatGPT whether the Plymouth Independent is biased towards conservation and environment, and it said, and it prints the thing, while the Plymouth Independent has some valuable information on conservation and environment, it does tend to skew towards people who are in favor of preserving land and things like that. And it's like, as someone pointed out, I thought about it, it's like, well, yes, because it took everything on our site, including all the letters, hundreds and hundreds of letters that we published. And guess what? People that are engaged tend to, most people don't write letters and say, let's tear down more, let's cut down more trees. You're getting letters from people that want to preserve land and things. So the AI viewed that as bias. So that's how easily it can happen. Just
a little anecdote. Well, first of all, if you use Google, you use AI, right? I'm looking at AI summaries, and I'm a Google nut. I'm constantly looking stuff up. But we had a meeting the other day on Zoom, editor, development director. I was on it. There were some other people on it. And somebody had Otter. Do you know Otter? It's an AI. It was an AI meeting note taker. And wow. Well, first of all, everything was in these meeting notes that Otter took. And it had some very strange interpretations of what had been said. Just nothing awful. Didn't, have my foul language in there. But there were like some strange things. It was a casual opening to the meeting, and then somebody made a comment about somebody else's clothing, it was just like crazy stuff. And you just don't, we're all about truth and accuracy, and you just have to be, the answer is you have to use it really carefully, really selectively for right now, but you got to be open to it also and be up on what's going on.
If we're going to talk about AI, we also talk about the environmental impact of AI. It's really big concerning to hear you guys talk about it, and it's incredibly bad for the environment. And we're talking about wanting more use. I don't even see the planet, in the 29 years I've been alive, October is now summer. I'm not happy about hearing AI spoken about so casually.
So the question is about the environmental impact of AI. I don't know how many of us are qualified to say much about that, but it clearly is something that people are paying a lot of attention to.
Yeah, absolutely a concern. Absolutely a concern.
Yeah, one of our section headers is environment, and that was, you had the environment section. Are we doing enough coverage of the environment? Well, according to that reader, we're yes, too much, but we're not, and we will do more because, they're not building any more land.
Your question, sir.
Yes, well, obviously, donations don't work, at least in Plymouth. So why don't we concentrate on the political work with the state because the state can subsidize the truly dependent. Nothing is truly dependent, but they can subsidize at least something that is not privately owned.
Well, the question is why aren't we encouraging the state to subsidize independent journalism? That raises obviously a lot of questions about how independent you can be if you're supported by the state. But I know that Massachusetts is talking about some support.
Okay, they do, okay, well.
And then there also is there's a question about, right now, the state has a law that says all legal reporting, legal notices and so on, can only go into print journalism.
Paid legal notices.
It's
Paid
the only
legal.
reason the Old Colony Memorial still exists.
But, I'm very wary of any kind of government funding. Look at what's going on with NPR and PBS. And I don't want to have to fight that fight.
And even NPR only it's only about 4 or 5%, I think. It's not a lot, but
Right.
still.
In the end, we're going to depend on our readers. In the old days, newspapers were survived on advertising from their local businesses. That world no longer exists. It's going to be the readers who choose whether their local sources of journalism survive or not.
Why did they disappear here?
Why did they disappear? Because the advertising disappeared. Or it went to Facebook, or it went to social media. It disappeared. Craigslist alone. I don't remember if you probably remember reading the Globe. It was full of help wanted ads, just pages and pages. The New York Times, where I worked, had full sections of help wanted ads. Craigslist pretty much wiped that out immediately.
Also, someone once explained to me in very Luddite terms, even when we did get digital advertising, right? Because all these newspapers had .com sites. We had digital sites, but we lost print dollars and we got pennies for digital advertising.
Okay, maybe there's time for one last question.
Just a quick thought, Old Colony Memorial, we all paid our bill, we got the newspaper, you had a brick and mortar situation, and you were saying advertising and those people who paid for the newspaper covered the costs, or at least paid the people who worked there. Was it more advertising or was it more subscription? And is it, I know you're trying not to charge for it, but when do you consider that? When do you think about someone who would say to you, I'd rather just pay you something that you tell me is worth what your work is than for me to donate. Oh yeah, I can donate. I forgot I haven't donated for a while. More of a regular.
Yeah, we just don't think it would add up to be enough. If 10,000 people did it and is $25, doesn't even cover one.
And then only those 10,000 people would be allowed to read the paper.
So you're narrowing your audience. And one of the things that drives us is the notion of public service. This is a whole new way of thinking about journalism as a public service, the same way that, a community health organization is, or, the things that make a community go. And so it's really trying to get people to think differently, but the advertising's not there. No. They don't want to pay for print advertising that would cover the cost of what it takes to produce the journalism. It's just you can go online and for a much, a fraction of the cost, get many more eyeballs on your ads, and people who see your ads click through and buy.
I would just say quickly too, I really appreciate that and people's willingness to do that, and they can sort of mimic it by giving us $25, $30 a month, and just when you donate, and just make that a recurring donation. So in effect, that's what you're doing. But it's the Old Colony Memorial. Some of you were around then, when I was the editor of it, we peaked at 23,000 copies sold a week at $1 a piece back then. And, you know, around the holidays, we would have a 128-page newspaper with 4 or 5 sections, wallpaper of legal advertisements. They're basically like printing money, all of that stuff. I think the Old Colony now is around 2,000 subscribers. And the only reason it exists is because they can get the legal advertisement under the law and we can't. So I guess when you're not paying any staff, you can just, and you own hundreds of papers, so just print this other one and throw a bunch of crap in it from Virginia or Beverly or whatever and call it the local newspaper. And I don't know why anybody in Plymouth would still buy it, but if you do, I urge you to stop. Please. But anyway, I thank you, because I would love to say, yeah, if we just had subscriptions, that would do it. But it goes against the mission, and I don't think it would work.
So one more question.
Yeah, it's more of a comment, but I feel as though you've made a huge difference in the work. Three people. You've done an amazing job, and I think people will support you more. This was a very good forum in that regard, but I just think you need you need congratulations, all of you who started this, who funded this, and particularly for the three of you. I think you made a difference in people's lives.
That's very kind, and I think that's an excellent place to end.
Good ending, yeah.
Thank
High
you very
note.
much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you all. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
See such a great turnout, and we appreciate you reading. We appreciate your monetary support. We just appreciate you helping us to build this new online community.
Thank you all.
Okay.